You're tuned in to the Dugout Report with Alec and Bradley. We're going to jump right into it. And we're going to start off with our players of the weekend. And Bradley, who is your player of the weekend from last weekend?
My player of the weekend was Brandon Lau, 6 for 11 with 2 BBIs and 1 strikeout in the 3-game sweep of the Blue Jays.
Mine was a guy that we talked about a lot in spring training and the offseason and how we thought he was going to win the Cy Young. He pulled a Greg Maddux and threw a complete game in under 100 pitches. Tarek Skubal. And his last pitch of the game, get this, was 104 miles an hour. Tell me that's not ridiculous.
Well, and being the fact that pitchers don't go as long as they used to when you throw a complete game, that's great. Because a lot of them don't go past 6 or 5 anymore. So
no,
that's awesome.
And he didn't give up any runs, didn't walk anybody, had 13 strikeouts. And I think he gave up like 2 or 3 hits. So now the next order of business is
still not giving up any. That's pretty good.
Yeah. Next order of business is, and we were supposed to do this to begin with, but we are going to recap every weekend series, and I believe Bradley has the paper for every weekend series that went on last week, and we're going to give our takeaways from it.
Okay, the Chicago Cubs took 2 out of 3 from the Reds. The Pirates took 2 out of 3 from the Brewers.
Well, no, so we're going to go series by series. Bradley, we're going to go series by series and give like 1 or 2 takeaways from each. So, like the Reds and Cubs, what are your 2 takeaways from that series?
2 out of 3 from.
I'll let you go first with your takeaways, and then I'll give mine. So,
maybe the Cubs are better than we all thought they were. No, I mean that was big for them to take 2 out of 3 from the Reds. Obviously, you're in the same division within the National League, so I know it's still May. We're not quite to the important games quite yet, but it's getting to that point. So if you can get as many games against your division opponent that are wins, that's always a bright move.
My big takeaway is the pitching, it seemed, was very optional in this series between the Cubs and the Reds. And I think that could come back to haunt the Reds. I think they need to add one more starter. And I got a video coming out tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, with some trade targets for teams to go after. And Rays fans here probably not going to be happy who's going to be included in that video. And my other takeaway is, I think both of us probably know this, the Reds are going to be okay, even though they play the Cubs again this coming weekend. What is the next weekend series that we're going to give takeaways
for? The Pirates took 2 out of 3 from the Brewers.
I'll go first on this one. So I'm going to say this. I did not see this coming. The Pirates have been atrocious, and I feel like we've talked about it at length on the show numerous times. Even telling people that Paul Skeens is not going to get moved. And their GM, Ben Cherington, not to get off the topic, but Ben Cherington came out in an interview and said that no way, no how is Paul Skeens going anywhere. They are committed to building around Paul Skeens.
That's good.
Yes, it is. But and Bradley and I kind of talked about this pre-show. The umpiring in this series between the Brewers and Pirates was, or was it? No, that might have been last night's game for the Pirates. I think it was last night. Umpiring in this series was okay, but the Pirates played last night, and Bradley and I talked about it. Not to, like I said, not to get off script, but we kind of talked about how horrible the umpiring was in the Pirates game last night. Two strikes that called on O'Neill Cruz that both pitches were in the dirt. Like, how are those strikes? And ladies and gentlemen, please let us know in the comments if you think it's time for the automatic ball strike system. And to get back, what are your takeaways from the Pirates and Brewers series over the weekend?
The one, Bud, that you just said, going and watching minor league baseball about once a week, once every couple weeks, to see that automated strike, it does work, and it should be in the majors already. And these kind of pitches that we're talking about would be called properly by the robot umpire and stuff like that. So that's that. It has to be kind of a surprise too, because like Alex mentioned, Pirates are not the greatest team right now, and for everyone out there that thinks that Skeens is going to get traded, it's going to take an absolute U-Haul of players and picks or money or whatever to get him out of Pittsburgh. So everybody needs to pump the brakes on the all Skeens trades.
Well, and what the quote I just said from the GM too. So that should tell you that he ain't going anywhere. If they trade anybody, it's gonna be maybe Andrew Heaney or Bailey Falter, because you got to remember, Bubba Chandler's lurking, and he leads AAA in strikeouts, and he's only been there for less than probably a week.
Mm-hmm.
What is the next weekend series?
The Nats took 2 out of 3 from the Giants.
Okay, this is another surprise. And I'll go again first. My takeaways are: do the Nats really need to rush Jacob Young and Dylan Cruz back from injury? Because we're seeing Robert Hassel play, who we, of course, like we've talked about 2 or 3 times, we've ranked in our prospect rankings. And then they called up one of their other top prospects, and they got a third one that's sitting down at AAA mashing in Brady House, who I dare to think is probably going to come up soon enough. But this was a very surprising outcome for the Nationals to take 2 out of 3 from the Giants. The Giants are supposed to be good. I think the Giants just ran into a hot team.
No, I agree.
I will be talking about a Nationals player in our Pep Talk segment coming up in a few minutes.
No, I agree, Bud, with you. The Nationals are 7-3 in their last 10. Do you need to rush those guys back? No, you're only a game and a half out of third place in the East behind the Phillies and the Mets, and the Braves right now hold that spot. But yeah, I don't think, and like you said, I think the Giants did run into kind of a buzzsaw. They ran into a hot team, and they only won 1 game out of the 3. So, yep.
What is the next one?
The next one is the Rays sweep the Blue Jays.
Blue Jays fans, one of my 2 takeaways. Blue Jays fans, I think it's time to realize that y'all might be sellers at the deadline. Somebody will pay a premium for Bichette, for Bo Bichette. and Chris Bassett and Kevin Gosman. Because you need, if you look at the Blue Jays farm system, they need to replenish their farm system. Their farm system is one of the worst in MLB. And on the Rays side, I think this is the I know Rays fans have been clamoring, oh, so and so doesn't need to be in the lineup if they have a batting average under 200. I think this is the Rays team everybody's been wanting to see the entire year. And shout out to a guy that everybody wanted to give up on and send him back down to AAA, and Curtis Mead. He's starting to, I'm not going to say rake, but he's starting to heat up a little bit. Where are all the Curtis Mead doubters at now? That he's actually starting to hit. And the problem the Rays are going to have is Johnny DeLuca's due back June 6th. Travis Jankowski is due back at some point. So you got to think there's two outfielders right there. Who is going to end up going down? You can't send Chandler Simpson down. There's no way. And then they just traded for Matt Thaiss, which makes me think that Ben Workvett's days as a Ray are
over or numbered.
Yeah. Once he joins the team, they're going to have to make a roster move. And the pitching was really good for the Rays. Littell, Pepio, Boz. What is your two takeaways from this sweep the Rays did to Toronto?
Well, it was good to finally see them win at home, because that's been a struggling spot all year for the Rays, to see them win at home. So there's that. I agree with the take on the Blue Jays. It might be time to blow it up. You're not the only one that you're not going to trade as Guerrero because you just signed him to a big contract. But everyone else is tradable. So, and the whole thing too with the Rays, you have Jake Magnum. He's getting ready to come back. Yeah, he's getting ready to come back as well. So the question now is, who do you send down or who do you trade? Because
and on top of that, Richie Palacios is due back soon too.
Yeah.
So you got to think Thaiss, and we're going to do some roster maneuverability right now for the Rays. Then we'll get back to the weekend recapping and giving our takeaways on the weekend series. So the Rays, you got to think Thaiss is going to replace Workvet. So there's one roster move. Mangum maybe replaces. Dare I say, do you give up on Morel this early?
No, I think the one that gets moved is Mead. That's the one that I've been hearing on the radio is Curtis Mead would be the one that would be either optioned, because you're not going to option Chandler Simpson back down. That would be bad, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would. So Mead goes down for Mangum. Who goes down for Jankowski? Or does Jankowski get optioned back to the minors?
I would say probably he gets optioned back to Durham or to Montgomery.
Or elects free agency and goes somewhere else. So there's two. Then you got Johnny DeLuca. Whose roster spot is DeLuca going to take?
That's a good question.
Maybe Morel? Because Morel's been atrocious.
That's a possibility. Yep.
And now to get back to the weekend series recap takeaways. Who is the next weekend series we are recapping and giving our takeaways for?
The next series is the Guardians took 2 out of 3 from the Tigers.
From the Tigers. I don't know what to think of the Guardians. It seems they win a couple series and you think, oh, they're starting to get hot. And then they lose to teams they're not supposed to lose to. Okay. Yes, they did take 2 out of 3 from the Tigers. The Tigers are a good team. And I think we both know that. The problem with the Guardians is their pitching. Their pitching's inconsistent. And what do you need when you get into October?
Pitching.
And I mean, don't get me wrong, the Guardians have one of the best closers in baseball. In Emmanuel Clase, which he should still be on the Rangers, but they were dumb enough to trade him back in the day to the Guardians. That's just like the Guardians giving the Rays Junior Caminero.
Yep.
What are your takeaways?
I think again it didn't really hurt Detroit. Yeah, they did only win one game. They're still 5 up right now over Cleveland. And my co-host is correct. It's funny how you beat teams you're supposed to beat, but you lose teams you're not supposed to lose to. So yeah, it's they're an enigma when it comes to that, and they're going to have to clean some things up. But again, still a lot of time left. I think after tonight will be part of the way.
Who did the Dodgers play over the weekend? I thought they played the Guardians.
No, that was actually the next one, but it's the Mets. The Mets took 2 out of 3 from LA over the weekend. Yep.
Dodgers fans, go find a place to hide. That's all I'm going to say. And Phillies fans, y'all need to hush. You need to hush and stop talking trash about Ohtani and how he's overrated. He's about to win another MVP, probably, and he hasn't even pitched yet. And that's the scary part about the Dodgers is they've got all these pitching injuries, and Sasaki's the latest one. Can you imagine that team when it's fully healthy with Ohtani pitching?
Scary.
It's a scary thought for the NL. For the Mets, I was not surprised they took 2 out of 3 from the Dodgers. I think they caught the Dodgers at the right time.
Yep.
And there's still people out there talking about, the Dodgers are going to go out and trade for an outfielder because Michael Conforto's been horrible. Dodgers, you don't need to trade for an outfielder. You have Andy Pages, who's been really good this year. What are your takeaways from this Mets-Dodgers 3-game set?
This kind of proves, too, that the Mets could be one of those teams in the National League. They only sit a game and a half out of the NL East at the moment behind the Phillies. So that it proves that they can hang the Dodgers. When it comes to the playoffs, it could be one of these could be a playoff series that we see down the road. And the Dodgers obviously see there it is. You guys got this great roster, but yet one thing can still kill you, and it's injuries, and that's what's happening with the Dodgers. We're only just 2 games up on the Giants and the Padres in the West. So I don't think anyone thought that those 2 teams would be this close that early.
Well, don't count out the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, they're only 6 games back.
It's still early in the season. Anything can happen. Let's do 2 more and then move on to the next.
Okay. Let's do this then. We'll do. We can do the backs if you want because they got swept by the Cardinals over the weekend.
Oh. I'll let you go first with your takeaways because I have some choice words for the front office of not the Diamondbacks, but the Cardinals.
Well, the Cardinals, who I think we both thought were going to be not so great, only sit 3 games out behind the Cubs right now in the Central. So they're holding their own. But we all know that the going to fall the other way because they're going to make trades. We talked about that last week with the Arenado trade and stuff. Trades are coming. So how long are they going to be there? We'll see. But yeah.
My one takeaway from this series for the Cardinals is they're starting to play their young guys. Gorman and Shigesi are both splitting time at third base. So I'm assuming that means Arenado has moved to DH. And then for the Diamondbacks, you got to figure out your offense. That's simple. You got to figure out your offense. If you can figure out your offense, I think you're going to be fine. But you can't go 2 or 3 games without scoring. Don't pull the Pirates and only score 3 runs per game. Sorry, Pirates fans. I didn't mean to take a dig at you like that, but the truth hurts sometimes.
The last one we can talk about is, and this might be kind of a shocker to a lot of people, the White Sox took 2 out of 3 from the Rangers over the weekend.
Ooh. I will say my takeaway is maybe the White Sox are turning a corner. And they're in their rebuild, not saying they're going to make the playoffs, but in their rebuild, maybe they're turning a corner into being better than people thought they were going to be. But they still got a boatload of prospects that have to be called up. And I think the Matt Theis trade to Tampa, is making room for one of those prospects that's in AAA right now. And Kyle Teal, who has been, here's a word people should know really well, raking. And now we are going to get to a segment we like to call Pep Talk, where each of us picked either a pitcher or a hitter that we're going to try to give a little positive reinforcement to either get them to turn around their batting average or their ERA. And who is the player you picked, Bradley?
I'm going to take Sonny Gray, who has a 4.06 ERA. In his last 3 starts, 2 of those 3, he's gone 6 innings, struck out 15 of those 2 starts. He needs to get back to that type of pitching and get away from the 3 2/3 innings in the other start that he had. So my pep talk to him is pitching again is, a lot of people wouldn't consider it, but it is mental. And if you start to question your confidence, that can hurt you. So I think he needs to try to get his confidence back, and I think the ERA will come down.
My pep talk is a national, Mitchell Parker, and his ERA over the last week is 5.59. And I went on his Baseball Savant page and looked at his pitch mix. And there's 2 pitches I think he needs to start throwing a little more. It's his slider that he only throws 10% of the time, and his splitter that he only throws 19. I think if he can, and my pep talk to him is Mitchell Parker, if you throw your splitter in your slider more, I think you're going to have more success. Or at least mix them in a little more. It doesn't have to go, because your fastball right now sits at 53%. And I think that's a little bit too high of a percentage to be throwing your fastball. Mm-hmm. When your fastball is, I think it was 93 or 94 miles an hour.
Yeah, that's not bad.
No. And then now we get to our 3 pitchers and 3 hitters that we're going to fix. And I will go first with my first pitcher that I'm going to fix. And
Cool.
it is a guy that both of us know well because he went to high school in Florida and he's on the Houston Astros and he just came back from injury. It is Lance McCullers Jr. Last 7 games, he's got a 6.57 ERA. And he needs to, for me, I think he needs to throw his cutter more. He only throws that 3% of the time. And he also needs to throw his needs to mix it in his he needs to mix his cutter into his repertoire more. If he does that, I think he can bring that ERA down. Who is your first pitcher you want to fix?
Taj Bradley of the Rays. He's the type of pitcher who I got to see last year as a media member, and I thought he has ice cold water in his veins. Like he never do anything bother him, and for some off the wall reason, this year he hasn't been the same pitcher that he was a year ago. And I know until Shane McClanahan gets back, they're going to lean on these guys, and maybe it could be that the pressure might be getting to him. But he would be one of those guys that we all know that can be good. We all know that. Even if you're not a Rays fan, you know who he is. And he's one of those guys that can be an elite pitcher on the Rays staff. So I think he just got to go back and settle back down and be the pitcher we all know that he can be, because we know he's good. So Taj Bradley is my first pitcher to fix.
My second pitcher I'm going to fix is a guy on the Orioles. And no, it's not Charlie Morton. It is one of the young guys in the rotation, Cade Povich. And he has a 5.59, a 5.25 ERA over the last week. He needs to he only throws his sweeper 18% of the time. And I think he needs to throw that a little bit more. Get it up to like 25, maybe 30%. Do you think that's reasonable?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then he only throws his slider, his sinker, 11% of the time. I think he needs to get that up to maybe, what do you say is a nice round number? 20?
Yeah. Yep.
20%. So get your sweeper up to like 25, 30% usage and your sinker up to 20. And I think you'll be in better shape. Who is the second pitcher you're going to try to fix?
Jose Barrios. I think he's the Blue Jays, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, Jose Barrios.
Yeah, he's got a 4.22 ERA. Another one of those guys, just like Taj Bradley, that could be, we all know he's good. Then again, it could be a confidence. It could be mechanics that need to be adjusted. Pitchers adjust their mechanics all the time. So maybe it's just time for him to adjust his mechanics, and he can get that ERA down from 4.22.
The last pitcher I'm going to try to fix is Guardians reliever. This guy used to be one of the top starting pitcher prospects for the Guardians, Joey Cantillo. And he has a 6.55 ERA over the last week. And he needs to mix in his curveball more. He only throws that 14% of the time. Nice run number would probably be, is 25% too high?
No, because if you can throw your curveball 25% of the time and mix it in with your other pitches, some pitchers out there, they throw their curveball 50% of the time. So yeah, absolutely.
And then, so 25% of the time he needs to get that up to 25%. And then he only throws his slider 8% of the time. So a nice round number for that would probably be 15, 20.
I was going to say 15%, but probably would be where I would.
And
15% slider, curveball,
yeah.
25% throw other pitches in there. Yep.
So, Mr. Cantillo, if you're listening to my fix for your pitch repertoire, you need to throw your curveball 20, mix it in at least 25% of the time, and then get your slider up to 15%. Who is the last pitcher you are going to try to fix?
Former Rays pitcher Jeffrey Springs. I think he's with the Athletics, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's who he's. 3.97 ERA at the moment. Again, he was one of the best relief pitchers here when he was in Tampa. As a reliever, I don't think you want to have an ERA that high because basically your job is to keep what the starter either has. You have to clean up what the damage he's left, or you kind of keep him in the game. And Jeffrey can be that way. And the A's are one of those teams too who no one wants to talk about, but they're still there and they're winning baseball games. So yeah.
I believe he's actually starting for the A's.
Let's see here. Probables. He's not going to be starting against the Astros or the Jays. Well, the Jays games Thursday and Saturday. There's been, and actually Thursday, Friday, Saturday, none of the pitchers have been announced. The next two starts are J.P. Sears will be starting tonight against Hunter Brown, and Luis Servino will be against Lance McCullers tomorrow. That's a day game in Houston for the A's and the Astros. But the three, they have not. Let's see, have they? Is he a starter? Oh yeah, you know what? He is. You're right, but he is. Now that I see it, he's 5-3. He's 11 games started. He's 5-3. Okay. Yep. So he is a starter there. Okay.
Now we're going to move on to our three hitters we are going to try to fix. Who is the first hitter you have that you're going to try to fix?
Willie Adames, who's hitting 205 right now. Again, another one of those former Rays hitters. We know he can hit. He did well here. But again, with him, the problem with him has been strikeouts. So he needs to be a little bit more patient at the plate. And, you don't always have to hit a home run. You can get base hits too. So that's how I would fix him.
The first guy I have to fix is another Guardian. It is former Rays prospect, now Guardians first baseman / DH, Kyle Manzardo, and he's hitting a dreadful 192 over the last 7 games. And I've watched film. I've watched the game, his last 7 games. He's chasing too many pitchers out of the strike zone. And what a strikeout's going to do for you? Hurt your average. Kyle, if you're listening, stop chasing pitches outside the zone. Take the Jose Ramirez approach. If the ball isn't in the zone, don't swing. Unless you have to, and it's a 3-2 count, and you don't want to leave it in the umpire's hands. Who is your second hitter you want to try to fix?
Dylan Cruz, he's hitting 196. Another one of those power hitters too that again could be a little bit more. See, that's the thing. You can be more patient and stop chasing pitches out of the strike zone. If you can do that, your average would be a lot higher than 196 right now. So yeah.
Oh, my next guy is a former Oriole. He's now on the Blue Jays, Anthony Santander. And he's hitting over the last 7 games right at the Mendoza line, which we all know is not somewhere you want to be. And then who is your third and final hitter you're going to try to fix?
Cooking, buddy. That was my third guy with Santander. He was great with the Orioles. We all know he can hit, but yeah, he's got to do better with the Jays if they're going to try to get out of the basement of, well, they're actually up there with the Rays and the Yankees at the moment. So yeah.
So that was yours. Mine is a guy that used to play, I believe, for the no, he never played for the Orioles. He's on the A's. Luis Urias. Last 7 games, 167 average. And I'm afraid he's going to start losing playing time because the A's are starting to call up their prospects. They called up Nick Kurtz earlier in the season. They just called up Denzel Clark, CJ Alexander. And Clark's been playing nearly every day since he got called up. Urias is a third baseman, but they've been playing Logan Davidson over there lately. So, Mr. Urias, if you're listening, Luis, not Ramon, because we know Ramon can hit. Luis, if you're listening, stop chasing pitches outside the zone. If you can do that, I think you will be fine. And this segment might be long because we are going to try to convince teams to start calling up their prospects. And we'll give you a couple of examples of teams that have already started to do that. One of them is the Oakland A's. They've called up Denzel Clark. They've called up Nick Kurtz. They've called up Willie McGiver. First of all, what a great name that is. Willie McGiver. And he got the game-winning hit in his major league debut. And unfortunately for JJ Bleday, he was the outfielder that was optioned back to AAA to make room for Mr. Clark. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen. You see what happens when you don't hit. You get demoted to the minors. Who are a couple of teams you want to convince to try to call up their prospects? I feel like you're going to say the Red Sox.
I that was one of them that you could say that could call up their prospects. Obviously, now that Alex Bregman is hurt, so yeah, definitely.
Marcelo did get called up.
Yeah, I saw that. So, but Roman Anthony still hasn't gotten called up yet. So that's I think the one.
That's probably going to take an injury, or maybe they finally decide it's time to move on from Ceddanne Rafaela.
It could be. I was gonna say the White Sox, but because what do you have to lose? And they seem to be calling them up, and they're winning games. In fact, they don't own the worst record in the majors right now. That belongs to the 9-win Rockies. So throw that out there. 9 wins, girls. 9 wins so far this year. Yep.
Well, and convince the Rockies. The Rockies still have some good prospects that need to be called up. Zach Veen.
What do you have to lose? Because you're already bad enough. So what do you have to lose? So why not? Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna rattle off 4 or 5 teams, and both of us are gonna say yes or no on whether they should call up their prospects, and we have to convince them why. To start, the St. Louis Cardinals who have already called up Thomas DeJacy. Should they start calling up the rest of their top prospects? I'm going to say yes.
Me too. I'd say yes as well.
And what is your reasoning for why you said yes?
Well, unfortunately, Father Time is undefeated. And if you call your kids up now and they do well, you have your future laid out for you. And St. Louis needs to get younger. So,
And you also get an extra draft pick.
and that too. So, and there's a benefit to that them too. So yeah, I mean, again, the Cardinals are only 3 games out of first place right now. We didn't think that was going to be that way, but as of right now, everything's fine. So if they keep bringing those kids up, you never know what might happen.
I said yes because I agree with what you said. But we know Eric Fetty's going to get traded. We know Sonny Gray's probably going to get moved. We know Helsley's going to get moved. So there's 3 spots right there on the roster that are open. 2 in the rotation, and you could call a guy like Michael McGreevy up, or maybe T. Kent, or maybe one of the other prospects we ranked, and
Right.
see what they're Quinn Matthews. So there's one. The next one is the Pittsburgh Pirates. And do you think they should call up? I'm going to specifically say Bubba Chandler. Should they call up Bubba Chandler with the news coming out a couple weeks ago of Jared Jones being out the rest of the season and potentially probably being out next year because he might have to either get internal brace surgery done on his elbow or he might have to get Tommy John?
Absolutely. I mean, if you have an injured player at a position and you have someone down in the minors who can take that position and run with it, yeah, that's a no-brainer.
I'm saying yes too. And I mentioned it earlier with Bubba Chandler. He is leading the International League in AAA in strikeouts. And the Pirates did just call up, and I thought they were going to call up Chandler at the beginning of this week. They did call up another one of their pitching prospects, Braxton Ashcraft, who went 3 scoreless innings in his major league debut against the Diamondbacks. And I mean, they do have a spot open in the rotation. I mean, do you really trust a guy like Mike Burrows to be in your starting rotation? When Bubba Chandler's sitting down there at AAA just striking guys out, making them look like fools?
Yeah.
You know what? And I'm sick of teams doing this, but I get the reasoning why. I think they're waiting till the Super 2 deadline passes in June to call him up. Because one, they want that extra year of service. And they know if he does good and he finishes top 5 in Rookie of the Year, what is it? It nets him another draft pick.
Yep. That's probably exactly why they're waiting to call him up. Yep.
So we just did the Pirates. Yeah. Should the Tigers call up some of their prospects, even though they're in first place?
I would say no. I don't think you want to mess with chemistry. I mean, I'm sure it wouldn't hurt, but when you bring up a young guy, you got to. The machine is moving very, very well right now. Unless something drastic happens, I would say no at this point.
I'm gonna say no, but how much longer can you keep Max Clark in the minors for?
True.
Because I mean, yes, Javi Baez has had a resurgence in center field, but do you trust him playing there the entire rest of the season?
Well, that and then barring, but he doesn't get injured or anything like that either. And then of course, he had a meltdown yesterday or the other day when he got thrown out. So you have to keep that in mind as well. So yeah.
Yeah. Should the Marlins call up their prospects?
I would say yes. I think Miami's in last place in the NL East. So yeah, uh,
No, I think they're fourth behind ahead of Washington.
ahead of the Nationals. Okay, yeah, I would say, but then at that, I mean, again, you're in that type of position right now where no one expects anything out of you, and if you can get one or two of your prospects to be great, and they can. Now, I'm not saying they're going to win the World Series or anything, but if you can get into like third or second place in the NL East because you call these guys up and everything, all the stars align, why not?
I would say yes too. They have nothing to lose. I mean, Augustine Ramirez has already been called up, and look what he's doing. He's doing pretty good. And what Marlins fans don't realize is if these prospects do really good, you get an extra draft pick. If somehow one of them finishes in the top 5.
Right.
And I mean, they will be getting, I think, Yuri Perez back at some point this year, which that's a big addition for their rotation.
Mm-hmm.
Should the Orioles call up their prospects?
I would say absolutely, and the reason that I say that is they have already fired their manager, and it's not they have to be. And Oriole fans, you might hate me to say this, but they've got to be the biggest disappointment of the first third of the season so far because a lot of us thought they were going to be going for the title for the AL East, and they're just everything's gone wrong.
Well, I guess you know what? I guess when I did my division predictions in the before the season, I guess I was right on the AL East so far.
Yeah.
That the Rays were not going to be in last place and they were not going to be in fourth. And Orioles fans, I'm sorry to say this. Yes, you should call up your prospects because you're probably going to trade Mountcastle. You're probably going to trade Mullins. You're probably going to trade Cigano. You're probably going to trade whoever would want Charlie Morton.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably going to trade Eflin. So there's 5 right there. And then Ryan O'Hearn. So that's 6. So that's 6 roster spots that you'll have freed up from guys you traded. Not to mention other guys in the bullpen that could get traded. Maybe CNL Perez, which that would make 7. And I mean, you have a guy like Samuel Basayo sitting at AAA, just mashing. And he's not going to catch because you've got Adley catching, but he can play first base. Then you've got like Dylan Beavers, you've got Chance McDermott. I think it's Chase McDermott in AAA. You're going to get Grayson Rodriguez back at some point. I think it's just time to start full youth movement in Baltimore. Let the young guys play. Oh, and trade Ramon Urias too. And maybe Dylan Carlson. Which I totally forgot Dylan Carlson even signed with Baltimore. I mean, would you trade Dylan Carlson on the subject of the Orioles? Because he's still kind of young.
I mean, I guess it all depends too on what you're going to get back for him. But if you do trade him and he goes off and he ends up, doing very well for the next team that takes him on, and it comes back to bite you in the butt a little bit, maybe not. But if you take that chance and you get back in return from him ends up working out for you, yeah, then it wouldn't be so bad.
And the other thing I'm going to say is the only reason I say that is because you got to think Colton Cowser's hurt right now. But the update on him is he should be back within the next couple months. So you got to think that's going to be a roster crunch once he comes back. Because you're going to have too many outfielders for too few spots. Because O'Hearn can also play the outfield. So you would think maybe, and I don't think O'Hearn has any options, and I think he has enough service time to where he can refuse being optioned in the minors. Um, should the Twins call up their prospects?
I don't think it would hurt anything. I know they've been on the winning path here recently. I'm sure that it wouldn't hurt anything if they did start to call them up. Yeah, why not?
I mean, Zebby Matthews and David Festa are up.
Yeah. So they're already
Problem
starting to
is,
call.
I see, but the problem is, I say yes, but it's a hesitant yes because you're right now in the outfield. You've got Buxton, you've got Larnick, Wallner's hurt. You've got like 3 or 4 outfielders that are hurt right now. But the problem is when they come back. If you were to call up Walker Jenkins, when those guys come back, Walker Jenkins would be blocked from getting playing time. And you don't want that for your prospect. You want him playing virtually every day. Look at Jordan Lawler with the Diamondbacks right now. He's in the big leagues and he's only playing part-time. Which I think for him that's a slap in the face. He should be playing every day. I understand that you gave Perdomo and Marte extensions. That's all well and good. But a guy like Suarez, Eugenio Suarez, you know what you're going to get from him. You'll get 25 to 30 home runs. Then you're also going to get him striking out like 25, 30% of the time. And the last team we're going to leave off with is the Arizona Diamondbacks. And specifically, we did talk about him last show, and we're going to talk about him again. Why isn't Jordan Lawler playing every day? And Mike Hazen, I hope you're listening because I think both me and my co-host have some choice words for you. And I'll let you go ahead first.
Yeah, I do believe that if again we were talking earlier about the Diamondbacks and how Alec mentioned that it was time for them to kind of get their offense in on the right track, and bringing up one of these young guys might do that. You know, it's a new bat that no one has seen. Get hot, get the rest of the team hot. Yeah, why not in Arizona?
Mike Hazen, why not? I'm not saying DFA Eugenio Suarez, but tell him, look, you're going to be splitting time at third base moving forward with Jordan Lawler. Jordan Lawler needs these at-bats. The only way he can get better is with consistent ABs. Why do you think his average was so low last year? Because he barely played. If he would have played every day, he would have had a better batting average. And ladies and gentlemen, I will let Bradley tell you about his show that will be going on tonight at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, guys, it's a Walk Report. We're usually on Thursday nights. I will not be here. I'll be out of town on Thursday. But tonight, we're going to kind of start a series of shows here where I was watching a YouTube clip the other day, and they gave their Mount Rushmore of sports. So tonight, we're going to tackle the NHL, NFL, and college football. So there's 4 of us on the show. We're each going to give our 4. We can discuss who we picked and why we picked them. So head on over, guys. It'll be on at 8 o'clock. Hope to see you guys there.
And ladies and gentlemen, for Bradley and Alec, this is the Dugout Report. We are signing off. We will see everybody at 8 o'clock or next Tuesday. Yes, I do have a few videos planned for the next couple days, but Bradley will not, unfortunately, will not be here for those. So we will see him next Tuesday again.
You will. I'll be here. Yep.
But we are signing off for tonight. Unless any big news happens, whether that be trades or another prospect getting called up, which, yes, ladies and gentlemen, don't worry. We will have a podcast episode up eventually on the Red Sox calling up Marcelo Meyer. We just both I'm not going to say busy, but we've been tied up with this and getting ready for Bradley's show tonight. So be looking out for that within the next couple weeks. But for Alec and Bradley, we are officially signing off.